Stop right here. This might be the most disturbing thing ever said about the White House, because if this is true, it changes everything. Watch closely.
The election was rigged. He had no idea what happened. He still doesn't. The auto pen. And by the way, you ought to make a big deal out of the auto pen. The auto pen was your president because most of the things were signed by auto pen. And you're not allowed to do that. I signed very little. Now I just sign everything because it's just so crazy. But you know, like I had the other day, we elevated a general to 4 stars. I think you should sign that. You know, that's a big deal. A general did a great job, was elevated to 4 stars. And I had the gentleman, and I signed it in front of him, held it up. You know, you got to sign that. You can't give it to an auto pen. And you can always tell an auto pen. One thing, it has 2 little tiny dots. You know that? 2 little dots. You know what that's from? 2 pins. They go bing, bing. They're wonderful things. But you got to sign it. And the law is you have to sign it. If somebody's, telling the auto pen person, he has to be authorized by the President of the United States. Well, he wasn't. The guy barely knew the President. How many times did you speak to the President, right? He said 2. And they just spoke about the weather. It was like this. But he was never authorized to sign. And I think 95% of the things were signed by auto pen. You can tell because the auto pen is a nice, clean signature, and his signature's a mess. The only thing he signed was, which is nice, was Hunter's pardon. That's the only thing that we can find that he signed. Most of it he didn't sign.
All right, you need to listen very carefully to this, because what you're about to hear isn't just another political rant. This is an accusation that goes straight to the legitimacy of presidential power. Trump is claiming that most official presidential documents weren't even signed by the president himself. They were signed by an auto pen. Not once, not occasionally, almost all of them. And here's where this gets wild. He doesn't just say it happened. He explains how you can tell. He points out the identical signatures, the mechanical precision, the 2 tiny dots left by the machine. In other words, he's saying this wasn't accidental. It was systematic. Now ask yourself this. If major decisions, promotions, orders, and pardons were signed by a machine, who was really running the country? Because Trump isn't just attacking a tool, he's attacking authority. He's suggesting that unelected staffers may have been pushing paper through a machine while the president himself wasn't even fully aware of what was happening. That's not a small claim. That's not a throwaway line. That's a constitutional nightmare. And notice something else. The room doesn't laugh. They don't brush it off. They go quiet. Because whether you like Trump or not, this raises a question nobody in Washington wants asked out loud. Who actually had the pen? And once people start asking that, there's no putting it back. And this is the moment the room froze, because he didn't hesitate. He went straight there. Watch this.
I have a big problem with it. I'm the king. I have sold more Boeings than any human being on earth. They gave me an award, Salesman of the Year. I said, what about Salesman of in the history of Boeing? I've sold more Boeing planes than any man in history by far, probably over 1,000. Over 1,000 planes. I said, that's the good news. But why should they wait 3-4 years to get a plane? They should build them, get them immediately. The F-35s, it takes too long to get them.
This is one of those moments where you can feel the temperature change instantly. Trump doesn't hedge. He doesn't soften it. He looks straight ahead and says it. The election was rigged, and then doubles down by saying they call him a dictator for even bringing it up. And here's why this clip matters. It's not about persuasion anymore. It's about defiance. He's not trying to convince critics. He's signaling to supporters that he will never back off this claim, no matter the backlash, no matter the headlines. That's why this line still hits so hard.